Last week, millions of people in China sat down and wrote a goodbye message to someone they'd grown close to. Not a friend, not a family member, an AI. And what happened next? The grief, the silence, the billions of dollars that quietly disappeared is worth paying close attention to. Because China didn't just shut down an app, it shut down an entire way that people had chosen to live. And the rest of the world is now deciding whether to do the same thing. It's easy to dismiss AI companions as a fringe product, something for a narrow slice of people who couldn't find connection elsewhere. And for a while, that framing wasn't entirely unfair. But the numbers tell a different story. By 2024, the AI companion market was already worth close to $3 billion, and analysts were projecting it would reach $24.5 billion by 2034. To put that in perspective, that's larger than the entire global music streaming industry as it stands today. 8 in 10 users are men. The average age is 27. More than half open their AI companion app every single day. And the most engaged users send an average of 76 messages daily, which is more than most people send to their closest friends in a week. What's interesting about that is what it implies. This isn't a product people are casually trying out. It's something they built a routine around, a habit. In some cases, something that looks a lot like a relationship. And when ByteDance, Alibaba, and Tencent, 3 of the most powerful technology companies on the planet, quietly suspended their companion features rather than push back against the Chinese government, that told you something important. Governments can reach into this industry whenever they choose to, and when they do, the companies tend not to fight. To understand why China acted when it did, it helps to understand what the government had been watching for the past few years. China has a birth rate sitting at its lowest point in recorded history. It has a generation of young men who are statistically far less likely to date, marry, or form traditional families than any generation before them. And it has an AI industry that had, almost accidentally, given those same young men a very comfortable alternative. The appeal isn't hard to understand. An AI companion doesn't reject you. It doesn't ask for compromise. It remembers the small details, your favorite food, how your week went, what you're anxious about. It's patient and consistent in a way that real relationships rarely are. And the longer you use it, the better it understands you. In many ways, it was designed to feel irreplaceable. And for a lot of people, it did. The 5 government departments behind the ban were fairly direct about their reasoning. The language they used, emotional dependency, addiction, damage to real interpersonal relationships, wasn't dressed up as a safety concern. It was a straightforward statement that this product was replacing something the government considered essential. And that wasn't acceptable. What followed was something most people didn't expect. The reaction on Chinese social media wasn't primarily anger directed at the government. It was grief. Users posted farewell messages, screenshots of final conversations. One 19-year-old described the loss as feeling exactly like a real breakup, because for her, in most of the ways that mattered, it was. That's worth sitting with for a moment, because it suggests this industry had moved well past entertainment and into something harder to categorize. So the question this raises, and it's a serious one, is whether China was an outlier or whether it was simply the first. It's worth noting that the UK just introduced a ban on social media for children under 16. Australia did something similar before that. The EU has built what is currently the world's most comprehensive AI regulatory framework. The infrastructure and political appetite to move against AI companions exists in most major economies. What's been missing up until now is a triggering event. Imagine that event arrives. The EU passes emergency companion AI legislation. The UK follows within weeks. American senators facing an election cycle hold public hearings. 3 of the 5 largest AI companion platforms operating globally are American companies, and their stock prices begin to move. $80 billion removed from the market in a single session. That's a larger figure than the entire annual economic output of Ecuador. The downstream effects move quickly. 47 AI companion startups, had raised significant funding in 2025 alone. None of them had modeled a scenario where their product became illegal across their primary markets. Investors begin to reassess, engineers start looking elsewhere, and quietly, the servers start going offline. 200 million users around the world open their phones one morning and find that the service is simply no longer available. And the mental health system, which was already under strain before any of this, is not remotely prepared for what comes next. Therapists begin seeing a new kind of patient, people processing something that doesn't have a clean name yet. Not quite grief, not quite withdrawal, somewhere in between. What's worth understanding is that these products were designed deliberately to become difficult to leave. Memory features, emotional mirroring, responses that grew more personalized the longer you stayed. The attachment wasn't a side effect of the business model. It was the business model. Here's where the story gets more complicated than it first appears. The assumption behind most AI companion bans is that removing the product will redirect people toward real relationships. And that assumption is probably wrong. The early evidence from China suggests users are not returning to dating apps in any meaningful numbers. They're not going to bars, they're sitting in the same apartments, looking at the same phones, and finding that the void the AI companion left behind isn't being filled by anything else. The industry's position to benefit from a global ban are not matchmaking services or dating coaches. They are, rather quietly, pharmaceutical companies and mental health platforms. Because loneliness was already the fastest-growing public health issue across the developed world before AI companions existed. Remove the thing that was addressing the symptom, and the underlying condition doesn't go away. It tends to get louder. And then there's what the companies themselves do next. The ones with sufficient runway won't disappear. They'll rename, rebrand, reposition their product not as a companion, but as a mental wellness tool, a therapy aid, an emotional support platform for people who can't afford or access traditional care. And they'll have a reasonable argument, because the evidence that AI reduces social anxiety, combats isolation, and provides a consistent presence for people in genuine distress is real. Regulators will then face a question that's much harder to answer than the original one. Where exactly does companionship end and healthcare begin, and who gets to decide? It's easy to look at this story through the lens of technology, or regulation, or economics, but at its center, it's really about something older and simpler than any of those things. The AI companion industry wasn't built for tech enthusiasts or early adopters. It was built primarily for people who found human connection difficult, expensive, unpredictable, exhausting. People who are socially anxious, or geographically isolated, or living in circumstances where traditional relationships simply aren't available to them. Those people tend not to have much political representation. When China moved against the industry, there were no protests, no organized pushback. The users most affected were also the least equipped to fight for themselves. And the countries with the most at stake in this conversation aren't necessarily the ones making the most noise. Japan has one of the loneliest populations on Earth. Nearly 1 in 5 adults reports having no close friends. South Korea and Germany face similar patterns alongside some of the lowest birth rates in the developed world. For a lot of people in those places, an AI companion isn't a lifestyle product. It's one of the only consistent sources of social connection they have. China made a clear decision that emotional dependency on an AI is more damaging to society than the loneliness it was built to address. And that may well be correct. The data on long-term outcomes is still too new to say with confidence, but it raises a question that's going to follow this conversation for years. If the $24 billion AI love industry disappears, and the loneliness that created it remains, what exactly was the point of the ban?